We're
Back
live
online. Back online. I love the little
on actual
notification.
hump day for a
I don't
change.
know. I don't know if it actually comes across on the live stream, but when it's like you are now live, it's like you get that like surge of adrenaline.
Don't
You're like,
don't
oh,
screw
here
it
we
up.
go.
Don't say something stupid.
Don't
Hurry.
screw it up. Oh man, I screwed it up before I pressed cast, man.
Too late.
Okay, so we were about to start talking off camera, and I was like, "Now let's just get all the dirty laundry out here." People want to know what is going on with your camera.
People want to know.
Yeah, people need to know.
People want to know. Okay. So it's nothing too crazy. This is a brand new laptop. This is an HP OmniBook Ultra. So normally I'm streaming from my desktop computer, and I've got my fancy microphone and everything. But my on-the-go setup is down here in my dining room. I've got a laptop. It's pretty recent. It's got one of the new AMD AI9 365 processors.
This is the Microsoft Copilot PC. That's
Copilot Plus. Yeah.
Okay.
So most of the Copilot Plus
Plus
ones have been ARM, so the Snapdragon Elite ones. But this one is AMD, so it runs like all the regular Windows software without emulation or anything. But it has that NPU, that neural processing unit. So one of the things
we now have CPUs, GPUs, and NPUs.
NPUs. Okay. Well, and it's gotten kind of funny too, because the NPU is designed to do neural style, inference processing locally more efficiently than the GPU can do it. So it's got its own little section on there. And it's like, well, what would you want to use this for? Well, you can use it theoretically for anything that you would do inference processing to do. So voiced text. So it's something that would transcribe your thing, and then afterwards create a summary of it for you. Like that could all happen on the computer, because I think, and this is, I mentioned this before, this is where I think all the AI stuff is going. This is definitely the direction that Apple is taking, which is, Apple's there to sell hardware. And in a lot of ways, so is Microsoft. I mean, they're getting their cut out of people buying this from HP, or Dell or whatever, or their own Copilot stuff. And if you can have the AI running on the unit, on your PC, then that would give people a reason to upgrade. Because I don't know if you've noticed it. So my oldest daughter, has a M3 MacBook Air. You have
smart kid.
Your MacBook Pro is what, an M2?
M2 Pro, right?
Oh, right. And then there's plenty of people out there with like their M1 Pro or M1 Pro Max, whatever. So that's 3 generations behind. And now they have the M4 in the new MacBook Pros and the Mac Mini. And there's a ton of people out there with their M1 Pro Maxes that are like, why would I upgrade? It's fast.
Yeah, it crushes. Yeah,
exactly. Yep. Like or when you see the people that when Apple comes up with a new iPhone, they've been pretty far ahead on the processor side from what's going on in the Android ecosystem.
Right.
And so they're really kind of competing with themselves. And like, it's twice as fast. It's like twice as fast as Android. It's like, no, we were already twice as fast as Android. We're now twice as fast as our previous generation. And then I asked the people that had the previous generation, the people that say had the iPhone 14 or whatever, they're like, do you consider your iPhone slow? And they're like, what are you talking about? It's like, it's incredibly fast. It's like, well, this one's twice as fast.
I don't care. Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't matter. But if you said, well, look, the new one has this NPU on it, and a lot of the stuff that you were sending out online to a service that you might have to pay monthly for, that the API can change, you're not in control of it. There might be privacy issues. We can have all that running on your hardware, but the M1, it's just not fast enough. But the M4 is. Now it's time to upgrade. And then also for the people who are trying to provision data center stuff, there's not enough data center space in the world to run all the inferencing that people think will be the norm soon. So
yeah, but I'm on the same page as Apple in this case, I guess. If we're assigning who comes up with these ideas, I think the distributed, what can AI do for me locally wrapped up in the applications that I currently use. Like that's where like it's a real change in like what do you call it, workflow, to say, okay, now I'm
Mhm.
going to add this AI tool into my workflow, right?
Mhm.
But if let's say I'm using Canva, for example, like on the weekly, I design thumbnails for this and little graphics to promote, different speakers we have come in, whatever. We use Canva for that. Well, if Canva has an AI module, which they do built in to say, hey, give it some instructions and it can add some pizzazz or whatever. I mean, that saves
Mhm.
us a ton of time from having to go and either use templates that we've repurposed, or using legacy stuff that we did, and let's just swap out the face real quick. We're running behind on this one. It's like, no, AI could just dress up something like, really, here's three model. Well, I kind of like this one, but can you tone it down a little bit? Maybe make this red pop a
Mhm.
little bit more. Sure. What do you think? So
Mhm.
that is where I think there's just so much opportunity just in that little space. And you're just talking about very finely articulated versions of AI that are, let's say this AI is a great graphic designer, right? He can't code for you, can't, do complicated equations, but he knows that your eye flows like this down a page and you want to get the most, make sure you did a call out.
Mhm.
Don't forget your call to action, those kind of things. It's that's
Mhm.
very helpful. Yeah.
Well, and that's just like one of the many things that you'll just see AI baked into all sorts of stuff. And I think that version of it will be more or less seamless. So here's
And also
one.
not scary. It's like, well,
Right.
how's this threatening? Yeah.
Well,
That's
and so
good.
that's what's going on with my camera app. So I've got my little webcam here at the top of the screen. And if you notice, the background is blurred pretty nicely. And in fact, it tracks me way better than like your standard background blur can do. And it also kind of zooms and keeps me in the frame as much as possible. So this is,
Yeah.
instead of using just a standard filter to remove the background, it's using an AI heuristic. And there's some parts of it that are not quite perfect. So if you notice, so
Like the
I
way
have
it's giving you a
really
third ear right there.
no. Look, I have 10, 12 fingers.
Yeah.
No, but if you look, so my glasses, I have pretty strong prescription. And if I do this, it's not
Ah,
quite perfect, but it's very close. You can see it
oh, that's kind of
tries,
weird. Yeah.
it tries, but that's like because the image that you're seeing is actually AI generated. It's taking the photo and then using an AI generation to make a blurred background with me in the foreground. And so what you're seeing is the AI generated final version.
That's incredible, man.
So
It's really
um,
cool.
So a really neat thing. It's one of those where it's like maybe it matters, maybe it doesn't. But this is just one of the many things where AI is just being sprinkled around, added into
Yeah,
different
right.
stuff.
Slathered around on the bread, on
Yeah,
the toast. Yeah.
fun.
Yep. Well, so what are we talking about today, man? Are we getting into the issues? Or you got some
There's
big
so much
story
going
that's
on. We can do
so much.
politics. We can do tech. We can do. I mean, the geopolitics stuff has now gotten. It's a little. Has much happened since last week? We haven't seen any movement on Gaza. There was a.
Well, okay, so Trump's going to build all the condos in Gaza, and it's going to
That's what he
be the
said last week.
Riviera. Yeah, we talked about that, but he's doubled down on it now, so he's serious. That's definitely going to happen, according to him. And then the other thing that happened today is he had a call with Putin,
I heard
um,
about this. Yeah.
right? And very good call, solid call, blah 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 blah. Apparently, they had agreed to release that the one hostage guy that
Mhm.
what's his name now? I'm
Mark
forgetting, but
something or other.
something like that. And apparently, he had promised the mom. The mom was supposed to speak on stage with him in Butler, Pennsylvania, or whatever, right before he got shot. And of course, when that happened, all the mayhem, she never got to speak. But apparently, he had told her before that they went on. She's telling him her story and everything. He's like, I promise, I will get your. Once I
You'll
get
get
back
him
in
back.
there, I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get him back. And so, I think that was just a cool story. Um, but
So I'd also
the
heard today that there was a call with Zelensky
well,
that
that's
also
where
went well,
well that's
according.
where I was that's where I was going with that. So the Putin call happened, and we're going to work together. It's going to be great, whatever, right? A very promising call. And I told him that I am going to convey, the new stance of our administration to Zelensky, which is going to happen right after this press conference, basically. And so
Cool.
then after the press conference, he had another call with Zelensky, supposedly like 45-minute call or whatever, which yeah, went really well according to Zelensky. Zelensky's so great, man. He's like, I'm just happy to be here, man. And the call was great. That's just really
Good
cool and
call.
funny.
Good call.
Yeah, good call. Good call. Looking forward to a partnership. Anyway, but yeah, dude, people are losing their minds over it. On the positive side, yeah, we got this war coming to an end, which is great. The counter push is that the United States is now siding with dictators and strong men, and basically going to throw Ukraine to the wolves, and yeah, so that's the kerfuffle today. And the kerfuffle over the last couple days, as far as I can tell, was that we're tiptoeing right up to the edge of a constitutional crisis. Because the president is the president and the executive branch is reviewing expenditures in the executive branch, and this is a constitutional crisis. He has to get permission from Congress before he spends a nickel less than what. It's like, it's so crazy. It's like, dude, I seem to remember Biden saying, we're not going to spend the money that the Congress said for that wall because it's not a priority anymore. I mean, like, dude, this happens all the time. It's like, not to this scale, though. I mean,
it's definitely on a bigger
definitely
scale.
unnerving people. Yeah.
Well, and also I saw some pretty wild judicial decisions where I think for the Treasury, a judge declared without being even briefed from the opposing side. So like an ex parte decision. So like that almost, I mean, that happens for stuff like a domestic violence restraining order where they can't find the guy,
Right.
and they're like, well, okay, he's not here, we can't find him, and so you get a restraining order because you're in danger or whatever. But they didn't even bother asking for like an opposing brief or something. They're just like, oh, yep, this is clearly a problem. They're going to prevent anybody from accessing Treasury records from the administration, which the way it's worded would include the Secretary of the Treasury. So the Secretary of the Treasury can't even access the records of his own department that he's overseeing. And so that's going to have to be adjudicated or whatever. And there's a lot of discussion. People were saying, well, like, judge doesn't actually have the authority to tell the Treasury Secretary he doesn't have access to the Treasury because he's the Treasury Secretary. Like, he doesn't have the authority. It's like, I'm sorry, you can't tell him no.
Yeah.
So that, I think, it's starting to look a little bit to me like time to try to destroy the servers kind of thing, where it's like, well, let's not let it, give us 2 weeks, and then you can let them in. Just 2 weeks. And it's like, oh well, we
need more time to burn the documents. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what it looks like to me. But I tend to be.
We have a backup generator for 2 more shredders. We're bringing 2 more shredders in here.
2 more shredders, yeah. So I think that in terms of like document preservation, I think the 2 weeks doesn't matter as long as the documents are preserved. Then it's like, okay, do you fire people today or in 2 weeks? Whatever. But again, assuming the document preservation happens, which that was one of the things they were worried about at USAID, and that's why the people said that they went to work and found that their keys no longer worked and they couldn't log in.
Right.
Was because they were concerned that the information that they needed would be destroyed by people, so it's just like, no one's allowed to touch anything. And so,
although, I mean, with data recovery nowadays, I think it'd be pretty tough to, but anyway, I think zooming out a minute, I think just two kind of observations that I had. I'd be curious to hear your take on it. But the first observation is that I just think the Democrats are just completely on the wrong. They're taking the wrong approach here, in the sense that, and again, just tactically separating ourselves from, do I think this is a good idea or a bad idea? Like that's a whole.
You're just thinking like a chess game.
Just tactically, right? Because that's the argument that they're making. The argument they're making is, hey, this is actually Congress's job, not your job. Let's just say, right? Or you don't have the authority to do that. Whatever the case may be. That's their tactic, right? It's you're overstepping your bounds. You're not allowed to do that. That's our job. These people's responsibilities. It begs the question, well, okay, if it's their responsibility, then why haven't they done anything over the past 4 years? John Bolton was on Piers Morgan a couple of days ago, and he's like, yeah, well, this I worked for USAID for 3 years, but under Reagan, and look, I have this award that they gave me, and it's a really great organization to do a lot of good stuff. And I mean, hey, it was in need of reform back then, and I'm sure it's still in need of reform today, but blah blah blah. And it's like, And then it's like, dude, you just missed the whole point that you're saying that this organization that you worked at 40 years ago needed reform then, and you suppose that it probably does today. Well, hell yeah, it does. I mean, obviously,
So
it's
now
like, I
here's the
mean,
reform.
my business needs reform every quarter. Like, I mean, I operate in the market, right? Like,
Yeah.
if something we're doing isn't working, but we got to address it immediately. Like, we don't just, I don't have the ability to spend other people's money and then print more money when the money that I take from them isn't enough to do all the things that I said I want to do. I mean, like, that's so. Number one, I think. So here's my two observations. Number
Mhm.
one is they're going to find out. Like, so fast forward 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 2 months, whatever it is.
Yeah.
At some point, this is going to work its way up in front of the Supreme Court, and they're going to say exactly what the law says now, which is that the executive, the chief executive, has the ability to do whatever he wants to do, chief executive wise, in the executive branch. There is no prohibition about uh, firing people or choosing to how you manage the payroll like that. Those aren't constitutional things. It's not written out there. Yes, Congress has the power of the purse. That's the whole thing. I was like, oh, we have the power of the purse. You don't, and so you're not allowed to do this,
We
right?
can
And
cut
it's
off
like,
your
okay,
funding. But if they say, well,
it's
no,
like,
actually, we don't want any funding.
well, right, exactly. All these things are shrinking. So it's like they're literally the heads of these departments now, which are Trump appointees, are saying we don't need that money. And so
Mhm.
what are they going to do about it? It's like, no, you must spend more. I mean, that just puts them on completely the wrong side of the entire conversation, which is we're $30 trillion in debt. We're spending $1 trillion a year in interest payments. It's bigger than our entire defense budget at this point, and that just
Mhm.
happened. That just happened last year. So it's like, dude, what people don't realize is, we borrowed most of this money when the interest rates were much lower. As interest rates have gone up, servicing that debt becomes more and more expensive. And the thing is that this debt has to be continually recapitalized because it's not like a mortgage where you take out a 30-year note, whatever, right?
Yeah.
They have to go
It's
out
more
and
it's more for like our viewers out there that are just thinking about like how this debt works. It's more like you bought something on a 0% thing on your credit card. And by the
and
end
now
of
the end
the
of your 0% period is coming up, and you got to
coming
move
up,
it
and so
somehow,
now you've got to take that. You don't have the money to unload it now,
pay
and
it
so
off,
you need to
right?
bounce it to another card. But now that card is going to charge you, say, 3% in fees. And then when you bounce it again, now it's 3% in fees plus another 4% per month. And so now, like that thing that you bought on 0% interest, now you're paying a lot of interest for, and it can become like a huge drain on your personal
Well, not
finances.
just drain, but it will become like everybody, I'm sure, has the experience of I certainly do of getting my credit limit shrank, right? When they're like, hey, you're no longer a good risk for us, and we need to shrink your credit, right? Or you get declined for a new credit card, whatever. I mean, like, we've all been through scenarios like
Sure.
this, right? And the thing is that the cost of debt goes up based on your rating. And so we used to be AAA rated. They downgraded us years ago under one of the moron Republicans that was running the place because of the constant like shenanigans over raising the debt limit. Which I used to just rant and rave about. It's like, dude, the thing you have to do is you have to pay your bill. Like, this is so stupid. Like, we have the ability to print money. You already agreed to the spending. You got to pay the bills. Now, what you should be doing concurrently to paying the bills is going through with the fine tooth comb and finding all the stuff they're finding now. Like, this is crazy that it wasn't being done before. And yeah, it's
Mhm.
embarrassing to a lot of people who, as more of these stories come out, it's like, you're just on shakier and shakier eyes trying to defend. So why would you put yourself in that position? You just like, if I'm a Democrat or seeking leadership in that world or whatever, it's like, look, guys, yeah, this is some knuckleheaded stuff, and I mean, I'm jealous too that they took action on this first, but we could have done this anytime we wanted to, right? We just didn't want to because the system was serving us, right?
Yeah.
So you're right, and so I
Well,
mean, Democrats have had, I mean, let's face it, I mean, they played this way smarter over the past 4 or 5 decades, maybe longer, getting these things entrenched and getting the system, tuned to support what they're about. And half of what they're about, I'm about. So like, I don't have a problem with it tactically. It's just like, okay, at some point, right? Every racket comes to a close. Okay, the bill always comes due. The truth will out. All of the different things. I mean, all these sayings, right? And the people get fed up. I mean, French Revolution, they chop people's heads off, people riot, whatever the case may be, right? George Floyd, right? People they've had enough. And right now, the country's like, dude, this is outrageous. We've had enough. And so these guys want to do something about it. Yeah, he's a felon. Yeah, this guy's this. Yeah, he's that. I don't care. Put him back in there because you guys clearly are not interested in doing anything. That's the tone of the country. And so now you have these things coming out, these initiatives, and instead of like, hey, good job, guys. What else can we find, right? Or hey, all that's great, but let's make sure we protect this. And by the way, we would like to get with you on, because there's a lot of Democrat priorities that are not served well by the way money is being allocated right now. They could go after waste and abuse in the areas of government that don't benefit the tactics that they're about, right? So I mean, there's a lot of different opportunities here, and they're just missing all of them because they're so intent on, no, Trump must be stopped. And it's like, so they're going to end up, this is my prediction, a couple weeks, couple months, whatever it is, as it winds up, at some point, it's going to end up in front of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is going to say he absolutely has the authority to manage the affairs of the administration. All of these agencies, and this is the downside, I think, of the administrative state, really, is that, like, okay, yes, it works on autopilot, and yes, it can just go whatever, and it's been, and it's served the interests of, as we're seeing, like a lot of left-leaning initiatives over the past several years.
Yeah.
But it is all under the executive branch, and Congress. Yes, they've established these agencies, but they don't report to Congress. They're administered by the executive branch, and at the end of the day, if the executive is in there and says, okay, the Secretary of HHS, cabinet appointment, right? DNI, cabinet appointment, all these different cabinet appointments appointed by the administration or oversee Treasury Secretary, all these different things, Department of Education, Secretary of Education, right? Secretary of Labor, all these secretary, all they roll up under the president.
Yep.
Legally. And they're going to end up with nothing to show for all this, these shenanigans that they're doing, these public meltdowns that they're having. And not only will they not have accomplished anything, they are reinforcing the impression that I think in some cases unfair, frankly, that they are just, craven and beholden to all these special interests, like that's what the public is literally like watching them do.
Oh yeah.
I'm getting messages from lifelong liberals going, what are they thinking? Like it is crazy.
Well, I think some of this stuff, and this is the. So this is going to sound more kind of on the negative side, but I think they kind of have to, because this is their gravy train.
Nah.
So
I see what you mean.
Right. So this is one that came up, and I'm just mentioning this because Musk tweeted about her. But Samantha Power, who was the head of USAID, amasses a $200 and some odd million fortune, making $250,000 a year.
Right.
And you're like, well, how is that possible? How did you do that? And
well, she obviously has other sources of income.
Right. Well, so if you look at the sources of income, there's stuff like, well, there's this speaking engagement where she goes and she talked to this large group or whatever, and they paid her a speaking fee, of $100,000. Or she had an appointment at these major research university where she was paid $400,000. Not that she had to do anything; she was just on their faculty, and all these little things, right? But then all of those organizations wind up taking donations, and some of the donations are from USAID. So it's like you have this sort of circular, you're dipping your hand into the cookie jar. This is, I was reading the Plato's Republic, as people do.
Good book. Yeah. Yep.
But there's in book 8 of the Republic, he talks about the problems with democracies, and it was very prescient what he says. But one of the things he says is democracies really are filled with, you have three groups of people. So you've got like regular working people. That's the biggest group, but they usually have the least power because they're busy doing their own stuff and they don't care about politics.
Right.
Then you've got the rich, And then you've got what he calls the idlers. So these people don't make anything, but because they have the time, they can like do rabble rousing, and they
Make
can make
noise. Yeah.
speeches. And so it's like those are the ones who usually get in power, and they will form a symbiosis with the rich, so that they can take from the rich, not too much, because then the rich will, have them assassinated or whatever.
Right.
So they'll take some from the rich, and they will distribute it amongst the other people, that larger third
The
group,
working class. Yep. Yep.
but they'll retain the greater portion for themselves. And so that they will sort of pass back and forth in between the ruling group and the rich until it gets so far out of hand that you'll have one of the people within that rich group that will basically, he has this analogy of the werewolf. Like they'll figure out they can turn on each other, and the one that wins out is the tyrant, and the
Right.
civilization falls into tyranny. But it just made me think about like a lot of the stuff that has been uncovered, and we've talked about this before. I mean, I remember as kids noticing when someone said like, well, this person became fabulously wealthy while in office on a salary that simply couldn't possibly produce that much money, and you're like, how did they make the money? And it's like, well, somehow it just sort of happens, and it's like, whoa, because the symbiosis with the rich, and then in the process of taking from them, you're mostly keeping it for yourself and then distributing the rest of it everywhere else. And it seems like that has been what's been going on. And so people are going to march in the streets over this, not because they care about, foreign aid or delivering condoms to Nairobi or something like that. It's because this is how they're getting their money. This is how they're skimming off the top. And so like we just, as the people, right, cut off the source of money for every little pet project and propaganda system that's funding them. And so, I mean, it's like, I mean, it's been wild watching, and this is sort of tangentially related here. It's been wild watching the nomination debate over Robert F. Kennedy Jr., RFK Jr. So, Democrat, right, former Democrat, whatever, pro-choice,
Right.
Pro-choice, nominated by a Republican till he
Republican. Crazy.
So here's something. We've heard the Democrats saying for years now, ever since Roe v. Wade or Casey got overturned, and they're like, the one thing women's right to choose, women's choice. It's like,
right.
Hey, look, for the next 4 years, you can have, even while you're not in power, a pro-choice HHS secretary. The one thing that you said is the most valuable,
the most important thing.
Yeah. The most important civil rights issue we have facing our health is this, and trans stuff. We're not going to get the trans stuff, but you can get women's right to choose under a Republican.
Well, I would argue they're right in a way. I mean, women. I mean, the trans stuff is such a small fraction of society, but I mean, 52% of everybody's a woman, and I mean, they all deserve, in my opinion, the right to choose. So I'm a big fan.
Here's the thing. If you really meant that, why isn't anyone saying like, well, he's not perfect, and yes, he's Republican, but I mean, we're not going to find anyone else that'll be pro-choice that a Republican president will
exactly,
nominate.
dude. If he doesn't make it through, they're going to find some, to me, it's just. So again, so I also don't see a scenario where. Well, I also don't see a scenario where he doesn't get through. I mean, one of the biggest reasons. Yeah, one of the biggest reasons that Trump, I think, won is because he was able to merge with RFK. I mean, RFK, that the whole, I mean, whatever you think about his idea, again, like, we have people watching the show. They're like, oh, he's a crackpot. He's this, that, and that. Look, fine. Whatever. Okay. I'm not a doctor. I'm not here to adjudicate. Okay. Think whatever you want. However, just tactically, millions of people around the country like believe in what he's about. They think the pharmaceutical companies are corrupt. They think the medical system is corrupt, and they think most of these politicians are bought and paid for by all those forces, which they are. Okay,
those are all true.
Those are all true statements. And the thing is that also doesn't make them bad. Like just because somebody takes lobbying money, just because an industry lobbies doesn't make it bad, right? Like, I'm an insurance guy. I care that my industry is strong and that we get paid well and that we have a wealth of good products to offer and that we stay competitive and
You
the
lobby
government
the
doesn't
government.
try to, yeah, whatever. We pay to lobby, right? Sometimes the things that we lobby for, I personally had one a few years ago where I was like, actually, that is in the best interest of consumers there. Like the initiative that they're talking about is actually like that is actually a problem in our business
This is a win-win.
that but no, it's not a win-win. It's most of these things are win-lose, right? Like if there's something that is bad for consumers, let's say, I'll just speak for the insurance industry since I know. If there, for example, there are some products that a person with an insurance license can sell that a financial advisor would not sell. And the reason a financial advisor wouldn't sell it is because the financial advisor is typically more oriented around growing assets under management. And so, the whole industry is kind of moving to this fee-based thing where it's like, hey, you pay me $2,000 a year, whatever, and I will manage your money, right? Or 20,000, 100,000, whatever the number is, right? Depending on how
I
rich
promise
you
you to
are.
grow it by X amount.
And I'll grow, right, and I'll keep your business as long as your pile keeps growing. You're going to keep hiring me, but I'm not making trades because I'm trying to maximize commissions or anything else. Like I'm on your side here, right? We share an interest in growing this pile of money together, right? Whereas in the insurance business, like it is commission. It's all commission, and so there's always an element of where an agent who is not operating with integrity, right, could suggest products that are not good for the person. It's all kinds of different things, and so there are regulations that need to happen to protect consumers from predatory people that may be in that industry, right? Now, sometimes they go too far, and it's like, look, that's well intentioned, but it's going to ruin the insurance markets in your state for a couple of reasons. Here's why, right? And so we lobby for that.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's a natural tension. Pharmaceutical company, I love. Look, I got a prescription right here. I'm taking, right, and it's a miracle, right? So I love our pharmaceutical industry from that standpoint, right? I
Mhm.
think there's a lot of things about the pharmaceutical industry that need to be reformed, and they don't have any watchdog at all, basically because they bought everybody off, right? And so it's these are things that most people, again, these are like 80% issues where, like, dude, if 80% of the public is with you on this politically, uh, I mean, hey, if you disagree, by all means, take a principled stand and say, I don't care what people think, I'm gonna do what's right. Good, I like those people, right? That's
Fight,
not what's going
go
on
with your
here.
content.
Right, that's
That's not.
obviously not what's happening here, and people can see that, and so it's like it's just not intelligent. It's just not intelligent. It's like, dude, it's like when I, I used to love doing magic as a kid, right? And then I figured out, like, because you trick people and be, oh my goodness, and then you tell somebody how the trick works, right? And it's not impressive, right? I mean, you think you know how the trick works, but then once you find out, you're so disappointed that you're just like, oh man. And then you can't even. Then when you see the trick again, you have this like sense of superiority. I know what they're. That's not even real. Right? You knew it wasn't real before, but you were amazed, and now your sense of amazement is gone, right? And so, if they're like the person who has told everybody has figured out how the trick works, and they're still trying to perform the trick. It's like, dude,
No, no,
you need
watch
new
it again.
material. You need new material, right? No, I promise this time.
It's mesmerizing.
Yeah. So that's my going back to where we started on that. I really think they're going to end up on the wrong side of uh, and, people can make whatever arguments they want. Oh, the Supreme Court's corrupt too, blah blah, whatever. And I mean, okay, but that, right? So if you believe that, that, then why would you take because all of these legal machinations, right? Yeah. So I got a friendly judge over in the Ninth Circuit or whatever. Okay, but he's not the final word. You know where the final word is, and you know
Mhm.
what the law is. And to me, it's just crazy. There was video of Biden going around yesterday where the Supreme Court. Okay, well, okay. So let me set some context. So JD Vance put out some tweet over the weekend, and basically saying, hey, this judge that basically said that we can't cut costs, we can't fire people, right? Whatever. That's ridiculous. And he said something like, hey, if a judge tried to tell a general how to fight a war, right? The general can disregard that. It's like not his purview, not his lane, right? And if they're trying to tell us how to run the executive branch, I mean, sorry, the executive branch belongs to us. You're over there, we're over here. And people kind of took that to be like, well, this is a constitutional crisis because like they're saying they're not going to abide by the okay.
We always
Trump,
knew he was a dictator.
right?
JD Vance.
Trump, meanwhile, came out again today and was like, "Hey, look, we will respect, the court's decision, and we are going to appeal it. We're going to use the legal system to get the end result that we're looking for." And yeah, there's a pause. We're going to respect it. Everything's cool. Everything's cool. Let's just chill out. Okay, but people are still freaking out about it, and it's like, okay, so this video started going around. These videos of Biden, who, the Supreme Court, he had that thing to forgive college student debt, right? Which, by the way, I was a fan of. Okay, so I was a fan of it. Structurally not wise, but also it's a needed reset. I mean, the system is a massive scam, and it just I think these lenders and these schools deserve to get it a little bit. Sorry, I know that's your industry, but anyway, he wants to forgive the student debt. They file all these lawsuits, right? Goes through the courts. The Supreme Court comes out and says, actually, yeah, you can't do that, right? You can't do that. The business interests, they need to be protected, whatever. But you went into this with their eyes open, whatever the case may be, right? And he made speech after speech after speech where he was like, Supreme Court told me I couldn't do it, but I went ahead and did it anyway. And AOC, he needs to disregard this decision. Obviously, the Supreme Court's been captured, by the right, and he just needs to disregard that. And Okay, well, that was a decided, fully adjudicated decision that you're saying it's okay for the executive to disregard. It was okay for the executive to disregard building the wall, which, by the way, I still think building the wall is a stupid idea. Okay, thought it was stupid then. When Biden came in and was like, "Hey, we're not doing that anymore," I was like, "Good for you," right? Because it's dumb.
It was silly anyway.
Well, so what are you talking about? So here's this president saying, "Hey, the way that we're spending this money is dumb, and we're not going to do." He's not even saying like, he's just saying we're going to review it, we're going to put it out there, and then we'll run some polls on X or whatever, and we'll ax them, right? And people are freaking out. I just like it. It's not. It doesn't strike me as genuine. I don't think it strikes the average person as genuine. It's not. It doesn't come across as authentic in any meaningful way. And they're missing a massive opportunity here. And I just it's I don't know, it's crazy to me. Bad tactics always frustrate me. It's like, I mean, but again, if I was a Republican, I would be like, yeah, by all means, sue some more, have some more rallies. Because
it looks great.
It looks great. You keep going. Great.
We will win.
We will.
We won't stop. It
was like when Kamala Harris was like, okay, this time I want everybody to shout out your own name. What? Yeah, I missed the moment on that
one. They're not sending their best.
Not sending their best. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing is that for a long time they didn't have to be, right? And I think some of the reaction that
that's a good point.
Well, because the
system's been propping them up so much, they're just kind of like,
yeah, you just got to get someone who can, say the stuff on TV and look angry at the right moments, and
New York Times will run their columns, and we'll be good.
It's fine, yeah. And I think too, like some of the reaction that you get from within these agencies, where they're kind of like, Trump says, well, we're going to send Doge in there, and we're going to do an audit of everything, and the people in the agencies, like, some of the reaction is kind of like, well, we don't work for you, we don't
right.
do that, like, what are you talking? What?
No, our agency is independent.
Our agency is independent, yeah. We've always been independent. It's like, we don't work for you. It's like, no, you do. And you're about to find out just how independent you are. And it turns out maybe, and that's why, they're just firing everybody. And one of the interesting things about this is Musk is following the same playbook that he used in his Twitter takeover. I don't know if you remember, but he walked in with the sink.
Let that sink in.
Yeah. Let the sink in, and fired 90% of the people almost immediately. And then it was kind of like zero-based budgeting with personnel. Like, everybody's gone, and then we'll rehire whoever it is that we think will add to the efficiency of the organization. But one of the amazing things is that after firing 90% of the people, site still works great, new features get added. You have to wonder, like, what were those 90% of people doing, and why were they getting paid?
And the thing about Musk is, he's no dummy. I mean, like they people made a big deal about how he wrecked Twitter, and they lost all these lost all these losers. They lost all these users and all these advertising dollars. All of that's true. Revenue cratered. They do have a dip in users from their peak, right? But profits are through the roof from where they were.
Money.
They're making money, and it's just like, okay, I think people just they just miss the game, right? The game in business is to stay in business. Like, that's the game, right? Warren Buffett, number one rule of business: don't go out of business.
Don't go out of business.
And so, don't go out of business. And so, like, profit, cash flow, and profit. That's what you have to watch in business. And so, I mean, that is the ball game. Everything else is subservient to cash flow and profit. And in the government, you don't have the same constraints, which is good, right? It's not a for-profit organization. That's why government has a role to play. I've said this for years. That's why government has a role to play in certain areas where private industry can't play that role because it's not set up to play that role, right? But what's the ultimate game in the government, right? The game in the government is effectiveness, right? Does it deliver effectiveness? Like for example, like, take the most basic thing, cleaning the streets, right? And LaGuardia, Mayor LaGuardia has one of my favorite quotes of any politician ever, and that is, "There is no Republican way to clean the streets," right? There's no Republican or Democrat way to clean the streets. Like, the streets are either clean or they're not clean. That's it. It's a very binary thing, right? Like, the streets are clean, crime is down, whatever the case may be, right? Like, these are very basic objectives, right? So police force is to lower crime, right? All these different things, right? Like, have an objective. Government's objective should be and is to be responsive to the will of the people and to deliver what the people's say their objectives are in the last election, whatever it is, right? No matter how stupid it is, Brexit. I'm looking at you, Brexit. But so instead, what's happened is, and I think really, the more I've read about this and researched it, because I'm like, man, when did this all start to go sideways, right? And it's basically, I think, two key points in history. I don't know whether you have any thoughts on this, but to me, it seems like the Woodrow Wilson presidency in leading up to World War One, basically they instituted, and it was kind of his philosophy, that smart people should be making decisions, right? There are people who are experts who have studied, let's say water conservation, right? Water management, right? So smart people study water management, flows of water, accumulation, distribution systems, whatever. And why would we want a bunch of elected people who, hey, this guy was a pest exterminator last week, but now he's a member of Congress, and so we're going to let him, figure out what water conservation policy should look like. No, I mean, we'll set up an agency, and we'll put some smart people in there who've studied this. They'll be, answerable to the executive. Congress can determine how they want money spent, but then this agency can actually do the work of administering whatever that program was, right? Which, on its face, sounds like a good idea, and it is a good idea in theory, right? But in practice, what has happened is, these agencies have just proliferated to the point where, up until last year, even the courts had to be subservient to whatever an agency said the rules were. So, if an agency said, hey, a permissible level of, let's say, fluoride in the water is this, right? Even though it's really this, but we're going to say it's this. They can change that, right? And that's all.
They could change what it meant to have fluoride in the water.
Right.
Forget even what the levels were, but what the words fluoride in the water means, they could even change that.
What is in? So we have several words here.
What counts as fluoride?
Fluoride,
you just decide,
in water, and what is
the water?
The water, right? And yeah, that's what, and it's so funny. You hang around with lawyers enough, and I mean, like, I was fortunate. My ex-wife went to law school. I got to audit some of these classes. You hang out with lawyers long enough, and you'd be like, people used to make fun of Bill Clinton during those
Yeah,
depositions
it all
because he's like, well,
depends on
it
what the
depends on
meaning
what
of
the meaning of the
is.
word is, right? And it's like people are like, oh, but that's actually where the ball game is
Hmm.
the law is made up of words. How we interpret those words is what literally the entire exercise of the legal industry is. And so anyway, so Wilson, number one, and I really think I heard this argument once, and I was like, I don't know about that. But I started kind of like doing more reading, and they said, after Kennedy was assassinated, basically, like look at every single one of those presidents afterwards, right? LBJ and Nixon and Ford and Reagan and Carter and
Right.
all these different people, right? People lost so much faith in the people that were in government. Um, you know, uh, of course, you had Kennedy being assassinated. You had Vietnam, the debacle of Vietnam. You had Nixon getting bounced out because of Watergate and all this stuff. You had Ford pardoning Nixon before he could. I mean, all these different things, right? And it's like, dude, basically, people just got the idea that okay, these people are all crooks, and they're all going to do whatever they want to do, and so you
It's
know,
rigged.
uh, it's rigged, right? All these different things is kind of seeped into the psyche, and and couple that with the advent of television, all these other things, where politicians are way more interested in getting in front of the camera and getting a soundbite that can be replayed, on the evening news or whatever the case may be. And this is even before social media, like even metastasize that, right?
Yeah.
You don't have a lot of really, hey, no, it's crazy. People don't even expect it's like, oh, can you believe this? Musk is an unelected person. He's going rampaging through the government. It's like, okay, yes, he is an unelected person. That's correct. So is, by the way, um, the Secretary of the Treasury, the head of the Federal Reserve, the blah, blah, and we can go down a whole list of basically all the people that do everything in this country. None of them were elected. It's like,
Yep.
what are you talking about? It's like, oh, but and I heard somebody say this the other day. I was like, that makes no sense. Like, yes, he was unelected in the sense that he wasn't on the ballot, but he was on the ballot. Like, Trump had been talking about doing this for years. Musk was on the campaign trail with him talking about this. They had announced Doge way before the election. Like, everybody knew when he gets elected, he's going to put Musk in there, and they're going to
Well,
find places that they can save money.
so most of us and thought that it's like this is hilarious for the campaign, but he'll never do it. Just like
Oh,
nominating
I knew he was
Gabbard
going to
and
do it.
RFK Jr. and all that, like
Yeah.
cool for the campaign, but like when the time comes, there'll be some reason why it won't work out, and that's totally fine. It's like, oh no, no, that was the part they were serious about.
To me, I've always, not always, but I mean, over the last several years, like I've kind of taken the position that, look, I mean, when Trump says he's going to do something, like you can just basically count on him to do that, you know, um, whether it's good or bad, but I mean, like he's going to do it, that's why when
Mhm.
people are like, oh, Gaza, blah, blah, he doesn't really mean it. I'm like, yeah, he does. Like they're going to do something like, it'll be outrageous, but he's absolutely going to do it because he's there's something in his deal where it's like he thinks, oh, I'm making a promise, I'm going to keep that promise.
Yeah.
And people frame that a bunch of different idiotic ways on the right, but finally a person with integrity. It's like, no, uh, no, I don't think so. But it does make him very predictable, and it's like, okay, well, how would you not, like, obviously people voted for like, not only that, but like as they continue to post, have you seen the followers on the Doge account? Like, I mean, people are retweeting and reposting this stuff like crazy. People love that, like,
Mhm.
because it's like, I always knew they were, whoever did that, if it had been a Democrat, that would have been a huge win for them,
Yep.
huge, you know. Uh, and like, I mean, Obama deported all these people, right? Like deporter in chief or whatever. They
Mhm.
could have easily done whatever their philosophy was to address, this border situation. They just didn't want it. Didn't serve their objectives. Now you find out that like
Well,
$600 million was being spent every 2 weeks on bringing illegals into the country. Like,
yes.
what?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, and a lot of the a lot of the stuff where I said, well, they come in and then they're helped out by various charities, and you're like, who's funding the charities? And we find out we are.
We are.
Yeah. So it's like, no, that's the U.S. government doing it, but laundering it through charities so that the people who have power and influence can get their cut. That's what that was. So, but here's the thing, though.
Go ahead.
Here's the thing. So I totally agree with you. I think that the real problem here.
Score one for me.
I know. Well, I mean,
Russell agrees.
when you said something that's true, but I think that we're expecting too much out of the Democrat politicians, and I don't mean that like because they're Democrats, but I mean we're expecting too much out of the politicians in general. Very few people are thinking about like this is going to be good for the party long term. If you remember Gabbard, who I'm a big fan of Tulsi Gabbard, when she was running in 2020 on the Democrat ticket for president, some of the stuff that she was talking about was like, look, we've got to get out of, these endless wars, of regime change, like this meddling that we're doing all over the world. We have to stop this. This is not good. And it's like, yeah, it's not good for the country. And for the party, it's not good for us to be associated with these things because they inevitably blow up in our faces. And then we're the ones that look stupid. So it's like, but the thing is that would involve everybody on that panel that's running against her to go contrary to their own personal self-interest. Their personal self-interest is for all those wars to continue, because then that they become the person that can hand out the cookies to the different organizations, and they can get buddy with like the military contractors and so on. And so it's like nobody from the Biden administration wanted to end the war in Ukraine because they're all profiting. Even though it will be bad for the party, and then in a much bigger sense, bad for the country. But like, don't even worry about the country, whatever.
Yeah, especially when it ends in nuclear war, it might be bad for your kid.
Yeah, the country, mostly flyover country.
Maybe.
Anyway,
oh, right.
But as far as bad,
that's not where those nuclear bombs are heading, bro.
You're
in Omaha. You're in good shape.
You're fine. They're not going to Nebraska. Yeah,
right.
But that's the thing, though. It's like they're not. Hard to. It's
no,
hard
I hear you. I hear what you're saying. It's like prisoner's dilemma, basically, right? It's like, hey, even though this isn't good for the group as a whole, as long as it's good for me, then I'm going to keep doing.
I think you almost have to, if you're going to do government properly with the right kind of perspective, you would need to take kind of like a vow of poverty. And I don't mean maybe as far as you.
That's counterproductive. I'm going into government to get rich.
Exactly, but like,
right.
but like, maybe you don't show up with your shaved head and a saffron robe or something, but like you come in with that thing where like, no, my goal is actually to have less net worth when I leave than when I start. If I break even, I'll feel like I've failed in my vow of poverty,
right?
Or in this case, like with Musk, one of the funny things is he's so rich that it literally doesn't matter. Like he changed his name on X to Harry Balls, so that people, when they sit there and talk about what was on the account, they said, well, Harry Balls account or whatever, just so you could troll CNN, because it's like, how much do I care that you guys are trashing me on CNN? No, not at all. In fact, let me help you.
Not at all.
Yeah. Like you're trying to blackmail me with, like you have nothing, you can't take anything from me. It doesn't matter. And so, okay, there's issues with just rule by the rich, but it's going to be really hard to do that. And the people that they do send up there seem to be uniquely vulnerable to the incentive structure that helps them at the expense of the party. And so,
obviously, yeah,
that's really unfortunate. I mean, it's good for the people who bankroll this stuff, because then they have people they can manipulate quite easily, which is probably why they bankroll them so heavily. But it's unfortunate to see.
So I'm curious what your thoughts are about this. Did you see?
And by the way, this is both parties, I think, are subject to this issue. So I'm not trying to trash one party or another here.
No! Remember, we said we weren't going to do that anymore.
No, that's not a land acknowledgement. I mean, I'd say that I would have said the same thing about Mitt Romney, for example. Anyway,
right.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask you what you thought about. Here's a Debbie just commented. I can't believe you're surprised. I don't know what.
That I agreed with you.
Oh.
That's right.
What is this? Super Bowl ads? They're great. They weren't aired because what was she talking about?
I don't know.
Debbie,
I haven't
if
heard
you
that.
tune back in, we want to know what you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you think about this whole Eric Adams thing? Did you follow that at all? So Eric Adams is what was he
Mayor
accused
of New
of?
York, sitting
Mayor of
mayor
New
of New
York.
York,
Yeah, a Democrat.
NYC. Yep.
Yeah, Democrat, and he was accused of what?
I don't even know.
We got to Google this here. But anyway, so whatever he was accused of, they filed some charges against him, and they were going through, charging the charging mechanisms and everything. And
Yep.
I guess apparently Trump gave instructions to the DOJ to just drop it, move on.
Yep.
And people are losing their shit about it. Pardon my language there. But they in fact, one of my buddies this morning posted, "This is outrageous. That they let him off. He should be prosecuted, and if he's innocent, let it come out in court or whatever, right?"
Mhm.
And so I do see an issue, and I said this before the election. I do see an issue with the DOJ rolls up under the executive branch. Obviously, the president can tell the attorney general to do whatever, but traditionally they don't, right? Like that's seen as an independent branch, and they kind of
considered unseemly.
well, it's like look, their job is to root out crime wherever it is, crime and corruption wherever it is. And so like if the president's saying, hey, go after these bad guys but don't go after my guys, then that's a problem, right? What are your thoughts about this?
So here is the story from left-wing media had been pretty mum about this whole thing while it was going on. But right-wing media had some pretty interesting takes. So like the extreme right-wing media, this was back when these charges were first filed, thought that they
He
were
was charged
all
with, pardon me. So he was charged with bribery, fraud, and a bunch of other counts. So just, I'm still digging into it, but
some white collar stuff. Like he's not accused of like
well, I mean, bribery and fraud are not good.
He's not accused of any violent crimes.
No, yeah,
Embezzlement.
He hadn't murdered anybody. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So from extreme right-wing media, who are no fans of his in terms of like a Democrat sitting mayor of NYC. Okay, so they're not fans of his.
And former sanctuary city mayor, all that
stuff.
Yeah.
They felt like he was being politically targeted by the Biden administration or the swamp, deep state, whatever you want to call it, the blob, for breaking ranks on the
immigration, right?
Immigration emergency.
Because all the buses that were coming in, and he was like, look, this is a problem.
This is a problem. We can't handle this. And at first he's going after the governor of Texas, who is sending the buses, but then he realizes that's not a winning play. The governor of Texas is extremely popular in general, but also popular for that, especially. It was like, oh, you want illegal immigrant? Well, take some of ours, which pretty much everyone thought was a pretty spicy move and all kind of appreciated. So he can't go after him. And so if his city's being overrun by a small number comparatively of illegal immigrants, then
and it's New York City, dude. 17 million people in New York City. So if you're being overrun,
what do you think these border counties?
What do you think the state of Texas has about 20 million people in it? I mean, like we're being overrun. You don't even know what you're talking about yet.
Yeah. So he kind of saw the light on this and also saw the direction that the country was going on this issue. And so he was one of the first, maybe one of the only ones within the Democrat Party at the time to say, this is a problem. We've got to put the stops on it, and called on Biden and the Biden administration to do something about it. We've got to do something about this. And so when that happened,
so that was disloyal. They went after him.
Suddenly, there's all sorts of fraud and bribery charges, and everyone's getting investigated, and we're arresting people. And it's like this just all seems to come out of nowhere.
Okay, so I'm just looking at this indictment. So the indictment is it was unsealed. Yeah. So it accused him of taking over $100,000 worth of free plane tickets and luxury hotel stays from wealthy Turkish nationals, and at least one government official in a nearly decade-long corruption scheme. So it's one count of conspiracy to receive campaign contributions from foreign nationals and commit wire fraud and bribery. And then 2 counts of soliciting campaign contributions from foreign nationals and 1 count of soliciting and accepting a bribe.
So it's going to be for a couple $100,000 that he took from some. So this is going to be all one event, right? So over the course of his career, he took some. He was given something that they're valuing at $100,000 was like a luxury stay somewhere, or come over to our place, you can stay for free in our hotel or whatever. And that because they did that during a campaign season, they're also going to call that a campaign contribution.
Campaign contribution,
which now means that it's now federal. And so it's like, we're going to take something pretty small and we're going to just blow it up to the maximum. Like, what is the biggest possible crime that we can use to describe this thing? And it's like, oh, it's fraud, federal election law breaking, bribe, all this other stuff.
Yeah, but this isn't Tammany Hall. This is, this isn't the exposure of some huge political boss. This is, I mean, what do these Turkish people even get for their $100,000?
Right,
Supposedly,
for
right?
$100K.
So like, yeah,
this is as close to nothing as possible. But as we all know, and as Joe Biden also agreed in his pardon of his son, that the prosecution itself is the punishment. Like, we don't actually have to find you guilty of anything. We just got to like do all this stuff and overturn your life right in the middle of an election year. So now all of your opponents can say, well, he's under suspicion for bribery.
He's under investigation. Well, which, by the way, I mean, Trump did that to Hillary. So, I mean, everybody does that. Yeah. I mean, hey, the FBI doesn't investigate things if there's nothing there.
Exactly. Exactly. So, I mean, so basically, so again, the far right, who is no fan of his, thought that the whole thing was retribution for him saying the obvious, that there is a problem with undocumented migrants coming across the border.
But on a higher level, right? Do you because this is coupled with a lot of conversation that I hear on the right about, like, for example, Rod Blagojevich got thrown in there in some podcast I was watching the other day. He got pardoned.
Brother got pardoned.
Oh, he was a great guy, and I mean, just was completely politically targeted. It's like, dude, he's not a great guy.
To sell the Senate
seat. To sell a Senate seat. I mean, they got him on tape. I mean, this is not. I mean, it's pretty open and shut as it gets.
I love it. The dude is. You can't get much more corrupt than Rod Blagojevich.
That's pretty dirty, And it's like, but people. I think there's this. I think it was Steve Bannon was talking about it. I mean, of course, like Steve Bannon, he just spent 4 months in the pen or whatever, So he's like, he's like, look, all these people, but unfairly targeted, and it's the end of this, and it's like, do you not see that maybe you're encouraging? I mean, like when Kash Patel gets in there. And I mean, like, I think Kash is going to do some good things. I mean, when I listened to his confirmation hearings, he had a lot of stuff that I thought was really good. But the one thing that really concerned me is he would not own. I heard the podcast. There was 2 of them where he was completely outspoken. This was years ago about, we've got an enemies list. We're going to go after every single one of these bastards, basically, and we're going to pin them to the wall, right?
Yeah,
of course that's concerning, right? You're going to head the FBI, and so like, and you have an enemies list, and you don't want to admit it in the middle of this hearing. Now I get, again, like, I mean, and this happens on the right and the left. These people show up at these hearings and they basically just say whatever needs to be said and obfuscate as much as possible on the uncomfortable things, and hope that there's enough political capital there to get you through. There's nothing new there, but at the same time, it's like. Does any of that concern you from a structural standpoint, or do you think, it's all justified because the whole system's been so bad for so long that who cares now?
No, I mean, so it's one of those where I think there are cases of that I think we would all sort of agree that are good. So here's one for you.
But apparently not, is my point, Like,
well, so here's an example.
With the Blagojevich thing, for example. But go ahead.
I don't know what's going on with that.
Yeah.
But so Ghislaine Maxwell, sitting in prison now, I think currently, was found guilty of child sex trafficking, and but to nobody, nobody has been charged, accused, or anything of legally of being the recipient of the demand side of this supply and demand thing that she was I don't know, not officiating, but
Facilitating. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, well, we know that we have this person in prison who was convicted of trafficking them, and it seems like our system has so far been protecting those who were who were
Paying
her
her to do it.
customers.
Right.
So when we
Gee, I
get
wonder
in there,
why.
right? If someone said, if when we get in there, we're going to go out and like actually prosecute these things. Now that we know they happened, and we know
But
they're
I don't have a problem with that.
right. So
I'm
you
talking
could say,
about
well, these are
I'm talking
enemies
about political
of the
enemies. Not
people.
I'm not talking about that. That's not what he's talking about either.
Right.
In the podcast that they're referencing, where he, and again, there's two of them. He's talking about political enemies. He's like, look,
Yeah.
yeah,
So that's what I'm saying. Like if someone, so there's one school of thought that's like, hey, look, if you come in there and you say, no, there's some people that we need to target because we know they're bad, and it's like, ooh, that's already wrong.
no,
That shows a lack of
I'm not saying that.
impartiality and all that. So it's like,
Yeah, I'm
okay,
not
it's
saying that.
okay to come in with a list of people or a list of investigations that you would like to run because you know there was an injustice there. That seems like is in principle okay. And when you say, well, some of the people that we know were bad, and we know they committed crimes because we have all the documentation, we just need to put the case together, and some of them are, in fact, our political opponents. Does the fact that they're political opponents means that they get it's like, oh, here's the Epstein list, but some of these are on the opposing party, so in order to not appear to be targeting our political enemies, we can't go after them. Like, well, I don't think
Yeah,
anybody would say that, right?
but I think in the Epstein case, it's far more the opposite. It's that yeah, there's some people we could go after here, but once we open this Pandora's box, there's enough of our people in there that we don't want
Oh
them to
yeah.
go down. So
When they
that's
open
what's
that,
going on with that.
when that Pandora's box gets opened, it's gonna affect everybody, every party. It's gonna affect multiple countries. Like that's gonna be a nasty box when it gets open.
It's
But
gonna
I
be
guess
fun though. I have my popcorn ready
I guess what I'm
because
trying to say,
it wasn't me. So
yeah, I know
I
that
was not
much.
involved.
I was never on that plane. I know none of these people.
Yeah.
But I think I think the issue here is like when you say, well, the political enemies, and we know who these, like if you're like, let's say, and I don't know who would be on the list, but like during the Obama years, we know that's all documented that the IRS went after groups that they thought could be um, a Tea Party.
Yeah.
So any charity that had the word patriot or whatever like that, they were like they would harass them, they would deny their paperwork, they do all sorts of stuff. So it's like, okay,
Right.
well, we know that happened, and that person needs to be prosecuted for it, and they're not going to be prosecuted under Biden. We're going to have to do it, and so it's like, well, is that an enemies list? I mean,
But that's not the
maybe
people he's
I
talking
don't
about.
know, like.
But Russ, that's not what he's talking about. And
Yeah.
I don't want to pin you down on it.
Well, no.
If
So, like, what's the scenario that he's talking about?
he's talking about specifically the people that that newspaper article that came out after the 2020 election, where they basically bragged about here's how we in the news
Fortification
colluded
article from
together.
Time.
Yes, here's how we
We
colluded
fortified the
together.
election.
We fortified our democracy, and we're proud of it. And here's how we did it. Right. Um, so he's talking about those people. He's talking about and then it after January 6th, uh, understandably, I mean that was a big deal. It was raucous. It was not cool, and so the Justice Department went after those people.
But in a
But
remarkably heavy-handed way.
their view is, and my view is, it was heavy-handed and an uneven application of justice in the sense that, or so-called, because you have the mirror image of those same events happening just a few months earlier on the left that were not prosecuted at all, and in fact, even, hey, we're going to raise money for these victims, which were actually the perpetrators of all the riots. Okay, so we had the ability to understand and provide some nuance around these rioters, but we don't have any interest in applying any nuance or understanding around these
No.
rioters, right?
There were some that were kept in jail the entire time of Biden's presidency,
Right.
the whole time.
Right. So, and I'm not saying there's not something to like. I'm just the choice of language is is just I don't know. It's just troubling, you know. And
The idea of having an enemies list.
well, just going after people that did us wrong, you know.
Yeah.
That is to me that's kind of what we were seeing the last few years in the Biden administration in reverse. It's like, well, why would you want to then? Because it's our turn now, you know. So
Yeah. Well, I mean,
and
this is
I'll give Trump some credit here because he hasn't used those kind of words in a long time. Now he was a couple years
Mhm.
ago, but he's cleaned it up the last couple of years. And yeah, hey, we got to give credit where credit's due. So, but the Cash Patel is not one of. He's like
Yeah.
basically like,
Well,
yeah,
so that's what I'm saying. Like, if you thought if this is all where like the enemies list sounds extremely Nixonian. I don't think anybody likes that kind of term. Um, but I can see like I said, bad and good versions of it. I mean, one version, like thinking of the January 6th thing, is that like any prosecutor had anything to do with this, we're not only going to fire them, but we're going to find some way to make their blacklist them from everything and destroy their life or
right.
whatever. And it's like sort of indiscriminately, carpet bomb this kind of thing. That seems really distasteful to me. I would be extremely disappointed if something like that happened. If it was something like, hey, when we get in there and we look through all the email records and we find that there's like 5 or 6 prosecutors that, totally had it in for people that are like, these these bastards need to fry, and we give them the death penalty if we could, and how dare they? And like, then someone says, well, I'm not sure this one is guilty. In fact, it's like, doesn't matter. Let's ignore the evidence, like whatever. Like if they find stuff like that, then it's like, well, shouldn't that person be prosecuted for or face some kind of disciplinary action for gross miscarriage of justice that they knew? Like,
I think we have examples. I guess this is, and we could maybe, I mean, if you want to comment on this, and we can kind of switch subjects. But like, I think we have enough examples of other countries who have gone down this kind of um, uh, uh, this road of like reprisals, one administration exercising reprisals against the previous one, et cetera, and
yeah,
it just that's not gonna end well for anybody. And I think it's a if you're somebody who's like, hey, I voted for Trump, and and I think whatever. Let's say you toe the party line, and you think it's just great that you guys are in charge now, and you can go and get all these get all these people. It's like look, at the end of the day, like somebody's got to. It's like that Justin Baldoni movie, right? It ends with us. Somebody's got to say, hey, this is the end of that line. We're not doing that anymore, and
hmm
and here's why. And I think so, some people who are more realpolitik, let's say, are like, hey, look, I mean, when you get in power, your job is to use power. So, go do what
yeah,
you got to do. I think it has a potential to be kind of the prisoner's dilemma thing that we're talking about. Like, feels good right now, very good in the short term, but in the long term, may not end up taking you where you want to go. So that's my thoughts on it. But what are your thoughts?
yeah. I can see that. I mean, there have been times, especially in American history, where people have done the unilaterally um, laid down their arms. Like there's, I can't remember which administration it was. It was Harding or maybe earlier, where there was a Supreme Court vacancy, and it was someone who had been appointed by the other party. It had retired for some health reasons or something, and he nominated someone of the other party. And his own party, there was like letters or whatever that had been preserved, and one of them said, "Look, it's a noble thing that you're doing, but this deference is not something that will be repaid.
Hmm.
Like you're not you're not going to get anything out of this. They're going to not do the same thing for us, so we might as well take the advantage while we can." And but he ignored that. He nominated them, and they were confirmed easily. And so I mean, there have been times where that kind of unilateral disarmament had occurred.
And we're still talking about it. So I mean, at
We're
the
still
end of the
talking
day,
about it. Yeah.
it's
So there's
yeah.
something about it, like I said, it's very
Did
inspiring.
it work? Right.
But the person who tried to dissuade him was also correct. That deference is not something that will be repaid.
Right.
So if they say, okay, well, look, we cannot decide not to punish those who attempted to destroy us, using legal means, whatever. But if we decide not to, there's as soon as we leave office, they're coming back for us again. So some point, like, doesn't self-preservation take over or something, like,
right.
yeah.
Right. And I do get the argument of like, hey, look, if somebody comes at you, you've got to put them down, and or else it's just going to keep happening, So I mean, I do get that. It's just you would hope that some, at least in the language arena, that some higher ideals might be at least spoken of.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, an enemies list is because of its connection with the Nixon administration. It's such a, I don't know. It's like, it's just
what
ugly sounding.
I was watching All the President's Men the other day.
Oh yeah.
You've seen that, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're watching this, you haven't seen it. Great movie.
Great movie. Classic.
Robert Redford, Dustin Hoffman, and the Watergate scandal, basically. Played Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein. I didn't realize this until I was just rewatching it, and I was like, oh my god, Nixon just what a character, dude. Like they had a committee. It was the committee to reelect the president. That was the name of the committee. And so they had abbreviated it to CREEP, CREEP, Committee to Re-elect the President. I'm like, wow, this is I mean, they just they were just like completely out there. Like, you mess with us and you are going down. Like, I mean, like that was Chuck Colson had a saying in his office. There's a great scene where the editor of the paper is talking to Bob Woodward, and he says, yeah, and Chuck Colson. And he goes, Chuck who? He's like, you don't know who Chuck Colson is? He's like, he's the special, he's the special counsel to the president. Mm-hmm. And he had oh man, I got to look up the quote. It was so funny because, especially considering who Chuck Colson ended up morphing into as his, I mean, that. You guys want an interesting biography to look into, and just look into Chuck Colson. I mean, what an interesting life. I mean, this guy was basically a hitman for one of the most ruthless presidents that ever has sat in the White House, and went to prison, for his shenanigans, and
found religion,
found God, came out a completely changed person, and then devoted the rest of his life to ministry and prison ministry. And fascinating story. Just when you hear the guy talk, I mean, when he was older, I was introduced to him, as a kid, as this guy who ran this prison ministry, and it wasn't until much later that I found out about his past life, and it's like,
where it was super nefarious. Yeah.
Oh, totally. Like, it's just an evil guy, Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Trying to find that quote.
I was in the White House. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah. The most powerful man in the United States is President Nixon. You've heard of him, right? Charles Colson is special counsel to the president. Then there's a cartoon on his wall. The caption reads, "When you've got them by the balls, their heart and minds will follow."
Good.
Chuck
yep.
Colson. Chuck Colson, ladies and gentlemen. Yep.
That's some frontier wisdom for you right there.
Frontier wisdom. Yeah, exactly, man. Well, forget about speaking softly. I just carry a big stick. That's Oh, here he goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so Tulsi got through. RFK, we were predicting he gets through
tomorrow. Yeah, that's tomorrow.
Kash Patel should get through. tomorrow.
In a week or two?
A week or two. Oh yeah, because it got delayed. That's right.
It got delayed. I don't know what the delay was about. I think some of this is just some slow walking, which I
Yeah,
guess is normal, but a little annoying.
it's totally normal, and it's not annoying at all. I mean, he should have expected it. First of all, the stuff that he said is pretty bombastic, and then he didn't back down an inch in front of the committee. So it's like it's not like it's not like he's making it easy for him. Pam Bondi got confirmed. So I mean,
Bondi's in.
it looks like he's gonna have his cabinet that he wanted. To me, it's interesting. You got this guy, Trump, former Democrat. You got Musk, former Democrat, voted for Biden in 2020. You got Tulsi Gabbard, former Democrat, ran against Trump in 2020, former chair of the DNC. You
Vice
got
chair.
vice chair, pardon me. You got RFK, former Democrat, 72 of his 73 years as perhaps one of the most famous Democrats in the country.
Mhm.
In his cap, I mean, I don't see how you make a case that it's not a completely it's odd. It's like it's bipartisan, but it's also extremely um, I don't know what you want to call it, but I mean it is their way or the highway right now, man. I mean I've never seen like the amount of executive actions that they're doing. I mean it's kind of funny tactically, right? Like
Yeah.
it's interesting watching it because it's like, dude, it's like if you had any one of these executive actions in the old days, they would have just, and old days meaning 3 weeks ago, they would have they would have they would have paraded it through the street and beat it to a bloody pulp and all this stuff. But there's so many of them. I think they just
Mhm.
they don't. It's almost like sensory overload or something. It's like,
Mhm.
what do I aim at? There's so much stuff that they're whether you would call it flooding the zone or whatever the case may be. But it's like it is it is insanity. I mean, and I think one of the things that kind of struck me. This might be a good note to end it on. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this. We haven't seen in our lifetimes, and I mean, like really, I mean, you have to go back 150 years. We haven't seen usually when a president gets reelected for their second term, their second terms are like the joke is that second terms are like that's it's like yeah everybody wants one but really you shouldn't have one because that's where all the scandals come from, right? I mean,
Right.
Iran Contra for Reagan, for I mean, you know you're entrenched, you're tired, all your players are kind of you had your way for the last 4 years, now you got four more, it's just that's where you overreach, that's where you like make dumb mistakes and whatever. But we haven't seen nobody has seen like anybody living an example of somebody who had the job, got bounced, and then had like 4 years to sit and think about like, okay, if I got that, if I get first,
What
it's
should
like if
I have
I ever
done?
get that job back, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
here's what I would do different, right? I mean, we all have those. I mean, everybody listening has some story, right? Where it's like, man, if I
Yeah.
had to do that over again, I would do this, and then had the time to plan. I mean, clearly, this is all like none of this is haphazard. I mean, this is the most effective rollout of you know uh, whatever you want what
Dare
do you want to call it?
dare I call it a blitzkrieg?
A blip? Yeah. Well, it is. It's like so.
Dare
This
I
is
call it?
dare I call it a blip? That's what it is. It's such a coordinate and dude, they're all buttoned up. That's why you don't see any like consternation when these legal challenges are filed. If you remember, like in the last time, they would file it. Okay, they have this Muslim ban, let's say, and the court would come out, judge would stop it, and that would dominate the news for like 2 or 3 weeks. He'd be like, I can't believe this, da da da. Corrupt judges, whatever. And then Democrats getting the gloat about it and just continuing that cycle over and over and over again. And it's like they're that's not happening. Like they've got all the legal opinions. I mean, and again, legal opinions are just that. They're opinions. They're
Mhm.
as worthless as it gets. At the end of the day, the courts get to decide. But the fact is, they've got their reasonings laid out, their legal justifications written out. They've given themselves cover on all these things in terms of like, yeah, hold on, we've thought about that. Here's how we address it, whatever. And it is I mean, they're going to win a few, they're going to lose a couple, but at the end of the day, like, I mean, that's life. And at the end of the day, like they just know it's like, dude, we're going to throw as much of this against the wall as we can in a short order. It's not like they're like, oh, we got 4 years to put this here. It's like, no, we're going to get all this done in the first 4 weeks, and then watch the fruits of our labor unfold over the next couple of years. And up till now, I don't see I haven't seen any effective response from the opposite. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think strategically you're right, and when you're talking about Grover Cleveland,
Yeah,
um, I mean, his wife, also one of the few presidents to get married while in office.
right.
But yeah, when they left, the story is that his wife, Mrs. Cleveland, talked to the incoming, who's it, Hayes, I think. Is it Rutherford B. Hayes in the middle? I can't remember. Anyway, she talked to the incoming first lady and said, don't change too much. We'll be back.
We'll be back. I heard
Right.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So and they did. It came back and energized and effective and so on. And I think that that's true. Like in this case, we've got 4 years to really strategize. Also, you find out in that 4 years who your real friends are. And in a way, especially since Trump had become so notorious through the media stuff and the stuff with Jan 6 and everything, that the people who stood by him, he knows are actually loyal.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think if you're in your second term, normally it's like, well, everyone wants to be close to the president,
Sure.
instead of like, here's someone who's like, no, I'm going to go defend you on this, even though I'm going to take a hit personally for it as well.
Right. And even though you're radioactive, like politically, and I'm putting my own career in jeopardy to stand by you right now. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think that that's a very rare gift. And I think he's been able to use that to I think assemble a pretty effective and I think surprising team here. And I looking at the first Trump presidency, the first term, you did see a lot of like an executive order would come out, it would get struck down, there'd be an appeal, then that would go, and then the Supreme Court would do it, and then it's like, okay, then after that gets all adjudicated, then the next executive
Here comes
order,
the next one. Right.
and then we do this and we do the process all over again. And so it's like there's a very limited number of stuff, and it's like, well, look, we're going to just do everything all at once, and then it'll all mature through the courts. Some of it gets appealed, some of it doesn't, and then it's like it actually will be put into effect in plenty of time. Like we don't have to sit here and constantly ask the Supreme Court for an emergency thing. Like, well, no. I mean, we'll just take it up. We have plenty of time. We're here for 4 years. It's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think there's a decent chance, if this process works, that you actually get to see some of the fruits of it before the midterms. So I think that'll be the real question, because if he can hold on to both houses for the midterms, that would be an amazing achievement. Because very likely what happens in 2 years is that you lose one or two of those, and then whichever one you lose becomes like the permanent committee on stopping Trump.
Right.
Whether that's like endless impeachment hearings, endless this, endless that, investigations that go on forever, and you just stonewall the other side because you don't have to listen to them. It's like, oh, the ranking member, that's nobody. Do we even give them time? Doesn't even matter.
Right.
So I think that's very likely what will happen, and he'll have to expect that, because it's like you've seen it now. 2 years goes in, and now you have the permanent committee on removing the president, and that's what the entire chamber becomes. So, do you want to deal with another Adam Schiff? Like, you might, and so now you get to just expect it, and so then it's like, well, I don't have 4 years, I have 2, and then if it works and I'm popular, then we get to keep my team in the legislature, and that's probably the way he's thinking of my team in the legislature.
Yep.
So, I think that'll be the real proof in the pudding, and we'll see. I just kind of wonder, because I surely the Democrats won't do this, but because it's just such a bad strategy, but maybe they will.
Don't put it past them.
Well, so He's term limited. He's not going to get reelected, and you can't. It's
No, they're working on overturning that right now.
Yeah, it's a smokescreen. But they're not going to be able to get rid of him either. There's no way to get enough votes in the Senate. The stuff he's doing is too popular. So
exactly.
So
I think because it's bipartisan in nature, even though people hate that, somebody saying that, but it's like you cannot get a team like that on the same page and fly them in formation unless you guys actually agree on these things. Like him and Tulsi share the same foreign policy point of view, right? For better or worse, him and Kash Patel share the same philosophy on how the DOJ should function, right? I think that for me, that's the most problematic one.
The FBI, Bondi is
right?
in charge of the DOJ.
Pardon me, the FBI. Yeah. Him and RFK, they actually share the same philosophy on the healthcare system and the undercurrents there. Maybe they would approach it a little differently, but they trust. There's a trust there because they're actually singing out of the same songbook, and so it's like, as a result, all the initiatives that you're seeing they're not these fringe right wing typical issues like well, like last time, like we got to roll back abortion rights, we got to get rid of gay rights, we got to whatever. I mean, you saw the one thing about trans people, which, but really, I mean,
that's going to
again,
be another 80% view as well.
That's another 80% view. So you got 80% on trans, you got 80% on immigration, and you got 80% on the health side of things. It's like, and you got 80% on the war thing, in the wars thing. So the only thing that the stumble spots that I like predict are the Gaza thing. Like if it's not handled right. And up till now, I mean, like it's interesting, it's fun to watch, it's humorous, but there's also some undercurrents of real world problems there. Like I mean, like Saudi Arabia and Jordan specifically, and Egypt, basically. Like I mean, they've been kind of slowly coming our direction for the last like several years. We're putting them in a really tough spot, basically saying, you guys need to take all these Palestinian refugees when we move them out of here. They're people. They just like hey, to some extent, like the politicians have to be responsive to the people. The people will revolt over there, and so it's just it's
like if you told Arizona they have to take in half the population of Peru.
Right. No, we're not doing that. Right. Yeah, it would be, and I think so. And the average American doesn't want to see American boots on the ground at all anywhere. Right. And there's I would say I don't know, majority, but there's certainly a big enough portion of the voters that don't also want to see Israel just completely ethnic cleanse a particular area. I mean, whatever. At the end of the day, whatever justification you use, it's still those images on TV. That is not going to be anybody's at all. Yeah, and so I just that to me those are kind of the couple areas of trouble there. But
yeah, well, like I said, I think I really hope, because I want the Democrat Party to become stronger and like very viable. You don't want a monoculture, or duopolies are bad, but monopolies are much worse. So
worse, right? Exactly.
Duopoly. So everybody would prefer to have a vibrant and idea-filled, strong Democrat Party. If they take over, the House or Senate or whatever, and they make those 2 years prior to the next election the Stop Trump years, he's gone anyway. Mm-hmm. Like there'll be nothing for you to run on. It's like, oh yeah, we finally put forward another articles of impeachment against him, and it was in the news this whole time. And it's like, well, but now he can't run anymore. Like,
right?
Yeah, like that seems like that would be a really bad blunder. So we'll see. That's kind of the big wild card for me is do they get their ideological act together where they can provide like a really coherent, cogent view of the way forward. Listen to people like who's the guy, the liberal patriot, Teixeira.
Who are you talking about? The comedian dude?
No. He he was one of the he wrote that book on like the permanent demographic shift in favor of the
Oh
Democrats.
yeah.
Uh, uh,
Demographics is destiny.
yeah,
John
he
Halpin.
uh,
Oh, Ray
uh,
Texera.
Roy Texera.
Yep.
He has some really interesting stuff to say about where he thinks the Democrat Party should go himself as a Democrat. And I think like, okay, maybe not exactly these things, but you can see like it becomes a party of ideas and ways to help people and more effective government and so on. And if it goes in that direction, I think it has a really great future. Not specifically those things, but becomes a party that wants to accomplish something instead of stop Hitler, who's not even really
Yeah,
Hitler.
yeah. I think it's interesting, man. You bring up a really interesting point. When you said I really want the Democrat Party to be stronger, right? And the people that watch this don't know you that well. I mean, like I can vouch if you really do. And like just like the same way that I wanted the Republican Party to be stronger a few years ago. During the Obama years, especially, it's like man. I mean, this used to be a great party. That was about small government and fiscal responsibility and what. And yeah, they had some crazy other right wing, cultural things going on. But like the essence of that piece was really good. And you had a lot of good thinkers, good speakers, et cetera, articulate people that could paint that vision out. And man, what happened to them? They became the party of one man, one woman, Defense of Marriage Act, and we can't let the gays run around. Like
Tea
it just
Party
it
kind of took over a lot of stuff on militias. It was like,
yeah. We like white supremacy. I mean, like just nuts. And you're like, dude, get your act together, right? And it's crazy to me how like a few years ago, like that demographics is destiny, like that whole book, that treatise is, I mean, that was uh, accepted wisdom on the left for, I mean,
mhm,
a long time. It was like, dude, these Republicans are so stupid because they're only going after white Christians basically, and they're just becoming a regional party of a rural party that services disaffected angry white people, and
clinging to their guns and religion.
clinging to their guns and their religion, right? And it's like, and we're the party that actually is about the solid policy and doing things, and getting things done. And it's like, man, it's crazy how fast that has flipped to.
Mhm.
And you watch, like, I mean, man, when Trump came to California, did you watch any of those? Not the press conferences, but like when he after he did the press conference, he went and met with. They had a round table. They had all these residents come in, and it was like
Mm-mm.
him, the mayor, the fire chief, a
Oh, I
couple
didn't see
other.
it. I didn't see it.
Oh, dude, it is so worth watching because everybody is. It's interesting, all these. They're all Democrats, all of them, right? There's a couple of his people that are there, and a couple of minority people, but not uh, uh, what do you call it? Demographic minority, but a political minority, right?
Mhm.
You had some Republicans there, but the vast majority of all the people in charge are Democrats, right? And so they're sitting at this round table, and he's there in the middle, and it's all very productive. It's actually pretty inspiring to watch because they're talking about uh, you don't have time to be ideological in a meeting like that because you're trying to like solve this problem. We got houses burning, fire burning, we need water, we need these a lot of logistical things going on, and then you had all of these homeowners that were in their residence that were asking questions of the panel, like, "Hey, okay, well, so what about this? And I got this thing that said I need to wait 18 months for this permit, blah blah blah." And that's crazy. We can't function like that. And you had Trump basically responding to the people like, "Yeah, that's crazy, but look, the federal government has waived all permits. Okay, so you have no problem with the federal government at all. So, like, I mean, because basically he issued waivers, whether it was EPA, all these different things. We're like, oh, you don't know if you can pave here, or whatever. It's like
Basically,
we're
from
waiving all.
Washington's perspective, start rebuilding.
Start rebuilding, right? And then he turns to the mayor and he goes, you have the power to do that too. Like you're the mayor here, right? Like, so you have the power to do that too. And I mean, respectfully, I encourage you to do the same thing. Let's get the government out of the way so these people can go back to build their house, clear their land or whatever. People wanted to go clear their land and they were being told by the government that, oh, you can't go clear the land. Like they weren't letting them back on their property to just clear the debris, do all the different stuff. And they were saying, well, because we want professionals to do it. It's dangerous. You're going to hurt yourself. You get somewhere, it'll metastasize into a bigger problem. And so we're not letting people back on their land. They had literally, and so like these people were showing up, pleading their case basically. And Trump is the one that's actually responding to, okay, yeah, that's a great point. Here's what we're going to do. And he would turn to his, person, and he'd be like, make a note of that. We're going to call this guy, get that done. And then he turned to the mayor and go, okay, and you guys should do the same thing. Like, just, and so, yeah, but, we absolutely will. We're looking at everything. We should have an answer within a week. And he's like, a week's way too long. What are you talking about? Like, aren't all these decision makers? But yeah, you guys are just make a decision. And and they're like, and the thing is that it's like all of the optics and all of the, and also just the tone. It's not about putting on a show. Like, people can see, like, okay, here's somebody that's trying to help me with my problem. Here's somebody that is, and let's put it as politely as possible. That, hey, the system is more important to protect than my problems, right? What does Humphrey Bogart say at Casablanca? Hey, the problems of three little people don't amount to a hill of beans in this crazy world, right? But that was literally the response that the people are getting is, my government doesn't care about what I need. And here's this guy coming in from Washington who the media was telling me is Hitler and the threat to democracy and a dictator to evil. And meanwhile, he's the only one at the table that has any,
seems interested in actually making it happen.
It was just fascinating to watch, because I was like, man, this is how did you guys take such a commanding position back in, say, 2014, 15, 12, 13, 14, 15, those years? I mean, they were just unstoppable, and it's like, man, you guys are really, but it's also kind of I think a warning to, Trump fans, let's say, is like, man, you got to have like humility, because it's like, dude, like, just as fast as you got in there, like, that's how fast it can turn around. But I never would have thought in a million years, it's like, dude, like, it's cool now to like wear a Trump hat, do the Trump dance on the field at the football game, and yeah, what Bill Maher says, he's jerking off two guys at the same time, because he dances like this, but people are doing the dance, and football players wearing Make America MAGA hats and stuff like that. It's like, because people are like, and I think Vivek Ramaswamy about a year and a half ago was on college campus, and he said, you want to be a rebel, you want to stick it to the man, you want to whatever, show up on campus and be a conservative. That's how you stick it to the man. And it's like, wow, like the tone of the whole electorate just completely shifted because of just the most gross incompetence that you can imagine on full display for everybody. It's I don't know, it's bizarre,
Well, in the words of our 45th and 47th president, you're fired.
You're fired. You're fired. Yeah. Well, man, another good. Oh, I have to tell you something too before we close.
Oh, what's up?
So I just saw Tom Christoph comment. So Tom and I talked this morning about something else, and the podcast came up, and he's like, man, it's just so cool to watch you and your brother. He's like, it's just cool that a podcast like that can even exist. Where you got like, two guys who are like, thoughtful and looking at stuff and not one-sided or whatever. Like, but at the same time, like, he goes, I would have thought you guys would be arguing all the time, because like typically I lean more left, you lean more, right-ish, I guess.
Anarchist is how I.
Yeah, you're an anarchist. Yeah, you're for minimal government. Like, it should just go away. But he was like, it's just great. He's like, that's what we need more of that. More conversation, more airing out of stuff, and let people just chew on ideas. Like, it's okay. It's okay to engage with an idea that's unusual, or maybe the other team is putting forward. It's like, I don't know that I would organize it that way, but I see what you're trying to do there. Let me see if I can be a part of it.
Yeah.
And it's not that long ago that we were able to do this as a country. Bill Clinton, I think really the late 90s. If you look at that, it's like, dude, that period from 90, whatever, 3 or 4, I guess, that midterm election, 94 till 2000. That's some of the most productive government collaboration that I've ever seen. I mean, like they still, the State of the Union, you go watch it on YouTube, where he's like, hey, the era of big government is over. We balanced the budget. We have a 200, I think it was $200 billion surplus. People were floored, but that didn't happen because Clinton's some genius. Like, he just was smart enough to be able to see which way the wind is blowing, triangulate the position, and say, oh, you guys want to cut taxes? I want to tax and spend, but people are with you. So how do we cut taxes the smartest way possible, right? I'm going to make my vice president in charge of the project to slim down the government. People forget, Al Gore was in charge of making us a smaller, smarter government. That was a Democrat, who just basically could see like where the mood of the country is. And that's what great leaders do, is like, yes, they speak the truth and they chart a course or whatever, but they also you have to get the support of the people. And it's not by telling a bunch of them they're wrong, it's like, just, okay. Right. I mean, I don't know.
They'll just move on. But it's nice that Tom liked our likes our podcast. One of the funny things that happened, I think, fairly recently was it over the Christmas break, we were hanging out or whatever. Someone was like, man, they just don't seem to argue as much about politics. It was like, well, we already talked about all this stuff on podcasts. Right. Like, we're hanging out talking about, sports or your new smartwatch or something like that. Like, we're not, like, oh no, politics. We already did that. It's good.
Yeah,
we're good. Which is fun because I think if we rewind the clock maybe 6-7 years ago, especially, I think we had a lot of very heated, I don't know, angry discussions, but definitely voices raised over some of this stuff. Which, I look back now with some degree of embarrassment, not because I thought that like some of the stuff that I said was wrong, or some of the stuff that you said was wrong, but it's like, that was the wrong way to engage with these ideas with each other. And so maybe it's just that we're older now, and it's like we can enjoy talking about it more, enjoy each other more. And so
I don't
know.
I agree with you. And I think too, like at least what I sense on the conservative side of things, like when I talk to my friends that are conservative, when I talk to dad, when I talk to mom, talk to just, I've talked to Brother Beckham, our old pastor last week. There's been on the right, there has been I don't know whether it's a realization. I never got a call or an acknowledgement or, I was wrong about that. Nobody's ever said anything like that. But there's definitely like, okay, we're just going to like not worry about that. Right. Like, let's take gay marriage, for example. Right now, gay marriage, I mean, like at the time, I mean, if you heard conservatives rail against like, oh, we have to defend marriage, one man, one woman, blah, 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 Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, whatever, all this stuff. Right. Mm-hmm. And, but you don't hear that at all. You don't even hear from conservatives. You don't even hear really any, what I would call like transphobic, speech or anything like that. It's not like, hey, we're, trans people are evil. So you ever hear any of that. It's like, dude, if you're an adult, go, you be you, wear whatever you want. Whatever. We just don't want it done to our kids. And we don't want, women, being disadvantaged. I mean, what's her name? That swimmer, Riley, whatever.
Oh, Riley Gaines, yeah.
Riley Gaines. She's like, dude, I mean, like this is the definition of what Title IX was designed to prohibit. Like, this is crazy. She was, maybe I'm the insane one. Yeah, that's it. Everybody else is saying I'm the crazy one. It's like, but you from a, it's almost like what's that book, the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff book? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like I see a lot of conservatives just like, we're just not, look, we got bigger fish to fry, right? And the real game is, doing these things, these initiatives, whether it's cutting costs in the government, shrinking our military footprint, different things that conservatives care about. That's where the game is. That's where we're going to play. And the rest of the stuff, like, and I think if Democrats could kind of do the same thing on their side, because they used to be really good at this, mm-hmm. it used to be very just kind of like almost dismissive of like, it's like, look, you guys are getting riled up about things that are not only inconsequential, and they really won't. I mean, look, the reality is they won't matter in a few months because it is 100% predictable the outcome of these initiatives, or your legal challenges. It's very predictable where they're going to end up. And so it's an exercise in futility, and it's sending completely the wrong message. And you're riled up about things that most people from the outside look in and go the same exact way that people looked in from the outside to the religious right, going, bro, like, why are you riled up about gay marriage? I had a lot of gay friends. Like, this is ridiculous. You guys are out of touch, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and then you miss, but your good government and your fiscal conservatism or something like that, that's actually what really matters about what you stand for as a political party. And yet people are discarding all those ideas because of this issue, this thing that you've decided to die on, this hill that you've decided to die on, which is like tangential to your actual purpose, right? And I think that's kind of the cul-de-sac I think that the Democrats find themselves in. And it doesn't take that many people, but it does take a few. It can't just be one person. I mean, but if a few of them got their heads together and like, look, dude, where there are opportunities to work together, I'm all about it, and where there's opportunities to disagree, like, I'll be vocal about it. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to sit here with my hair on fire, going on MSNBC and CNN, screaming about, Hitler and whatever. Like, it's
just looks kind of dumb.
Just
people are laughing, man.
They're all going to laugh at you.
People are laughing.
Yep. Good combo today, man.
Yep. Next week, maybe we'll have something to talk about.
Yeah. I like this. I like Wednesdays. I mean, hey, we named it Hump Day for a reason.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about that later. Stay tuned, audience. All right, man. Good seeing you.
Peace.